Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search. Welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I invite guests from the Fintech community for a bit of a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and in today's show, I'm joined by Dom Pim of Up and Ferocia. We recorded this show the morning after Dom was recognised at this year's Finnies as Fintech Leader of the Year. So if we sound a little bit hoarse and look a little bit shabby, please forgive us. I first met Dom about 4 years ago as Up was in beta phase. Back then, I kind of rather tongue-in-cheek said that Dom was the Aussie Steve Jobs. Since then, Dom's gone on to have a massive impact on the fintech industry here in Australia. Dom is now embarking on his next mission. His family office, Euphemia, promises to invest and support the next wave of Aussie fintech startups. Before we speak to Dom, I've got an important message. We're seeing increasing rounds of redundancies, and startups are starting to find capital much harder to come by. There's no doubt we're heading into a really tough period, and this is the time that we all have to support one another. Every week, I receive messages from around the world where this podcast platform has helped businesses find new talent, find new clients, find investors, or even find a job. So please help me keep the fintech community supported during this tough period by giving us a like and subscribe. And if podcasts are your jam, head over to Fintech Chatter Podcast and please leave us a 5-star review. It really does help us in spreading the word and keeping the fintech community prosperous and connected. Dom, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. It's our annual hotel rendezvous date. The show coincides with the Finnies or intersect.
Yeah.
But first of all, congratulations. Fintech Leader of the Year. I am in your presence today. Yeah. My prediction 4 years ago of you being the Aussie Fintech Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I surround myself with great people.
Yeah,
so
well, you do. Yeah. I'll give you that. You absolutely do.
Yeah, and I think it's made a huge difference. And it's been 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
We've been at it for a long time.
Yeah.
So very proud, but also very proud of the team. In fact, today I'm heading into the office and we have all staff. We call it a bonanza. And we're celebrating 3 of our Ferocians that have been with us for 10 years. Mm. And I think we've got another 14 people that have been with us for 8 years. So there's an extraordinary sort of retention, really great team that just wants to stay together. And we even have some people who have left and then come back again. Right?
Wow. So I think just for the very fact that you've managed to get all of your staff into the office means that you deserve Fintech.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Well, Dom, it's great to be with you again. And look, it's been a bit of a wild year since we last spoke. Crazy. I think we were in Melbourne and it seemed like everything was going to be back, and then we went into lockdown again. How's the last 12 months been for Up?
Oh, it's been crazy. I mean, I remember when we went to Intersect, there was some little gap between lockdowns.
Yeah, it was.
It was very fortunate that the event ran. I mean, the pandemic has been horrible for people who have suffered from it and died from it and all that sort of stuff. But what's happened in the fintech space is that the market is booming because everybody's gone digital.
Yeah.
And it used to be that we had to try and explain to people why having a bank in your mobile phone was awesome. And now there's nothing to explain. People just download the app and away they go. So we're signing up more people per day now than we ever have.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's out of control. And also the team itself is, when we launched 3.5, nearly 4 years ago, we had less than 30 people, and that was one of the things we talked about. Maybe you and I even talked about it, is that, having less than 30 people and launching a digital bank. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But now we're at probably 85 people in Ferocia, so it's grown significantly. We had to get a new office just to fit everyone in. Yeah.
Have you still got the table? In the kitchen.
Sure. We've got some big tables. Tomo actually, my business partner Tomo, he took some of the tables as a bit of a memento because it feels like there's energy in those tables because where we would sit around and crack bread and eat together, and then we had custom made tables for everyone to work on. And so those old timbers sort of tell a story.
Yeah.
And the stories they can tell about us building Up is amazing. You're really amazing.
Yeah, I remember the tour of the office, and it was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. And I think at the time, so this would have been, were you maybe not even a year old, June 2019 it would have been.
Yep.
And I was in the office, and I remember you had the counter, and it was at 99,000 something and odd customers, and I just missed the ticker to hit the 100,000.
Yeah, well, it's over 500,000 now.
Wow.
So it's been accelerating really quickly, but also the product set has been expanding. So we're doing a lot more now than we were.
Yeah.
Well, when we launched, we didn't even have payments, and so now we've got all sorts of things. And then we're moving on this year to launch our first credit product, which will be home loans.
Oh wow!
So that's a big scoop. We've been talking about it a little bit, and we didn't want to commit to a specific time frame because of the market conditions and all that sort of stuff. But things are accelerating at the moment with interest rates changing and with I guess all the different economic pressures that are happening with the markets and everything. So people are really now thinking about their bank and how they're going to pay for their house, and what do they do for a living, and do they have sufficient equity, or do they have sufficient capital? And so I think it's never a bad time to launch a new product, really, to be honest. But I think at the moment it's quite prescient, because what we've been doing is trying to help upsiders save for their first home. And there's a lot of people. I don't know that, I can't remember the number, but I think it's over $150 million that people have already saved towards buying a home, and we haven't even launched the product yet.
And so has this just been out in beta with it?
Well, we put a little like a precursor product, which is the Home Saver.
Right.
And the Home Saver just sort of provides some education for people about financial wellness and about saving up and putting aside money on a regular sort of daily basis, and roundups and all that sort of stuff. And we put that product out a few months back just to help people save up for a home, and we just didn't expect to get such a sort of massive response to it before we actually even have a home loan. So it's pretty cool.
As you become more like a bank, and what I mean by that is the product suite, how have you kind of managed not to become a bank, if that makes sense?
Yeah. No, it does make sense. I think, so the reason for launching a home loan or any credit product is so that we have products on both sides of the ledger. So that then we can generate a margin, and then we're literally a real bank. Because at the moment we make most of our revenue from our deposits. And it's a very unusual situation where you can actually make money from deposits. That's quite extraordinary. Normally, the deposits would be fueling the lending, and then the lending creates the margin. And so that's where we want to mature to having enough products in the set that we're able to generate our own profitability, our own revenue. And then we're actually, we've grown up. We've got our big boy pants.
Yeah, awesome. I think there was also some massive news in this last 12 months as well. Bendigo Bank and Ferocia. They're kind of the dream. Was it the dream exit? Can I say that? Or?
It was pretty amazing. I think it's a good way to characterise it, because we've been working with Bendigo for a decade, and we have a really good relationship there that we've developed over that time. And we already build their mobile and internet banking, and then we partner with them to do this 50-50 collaboration, this idea of this joint venture sort of thing, to do Up. And there was probably some confusion in the market about whether Ferocia was owned by Bendigo or whatever, but we never were. Like when we started, we maintained all the intellectual property. We built the solution from scratch, and we partnered with Bendigo to get access to the core banking system and their banking license. And I reckon it's the best exit ever, because what we've been able to do is we were acquired by Bendigo last September. And part of the acquisition was that we agreed with the bank and their executive that we would keep Ferocia completely separate. So the shareholdings changed, but unlike other neobank acquisitions where they get acquired, they get absorbed, they get shut down, all that sort of stuff, we're keeping Ferocia and Up outside of the bank, but the bank's just the shareholder now. And I think that's a better model that we've sort of architected, because it means that we can maintain our sort of independence and our personality. And it's all the same people doing all the same things, and I think that is pretty extraordinary. The only sad part of the whole thing is my business partner of 15 years is now out of the business, and so I've stayed around. He's got an amazing opportunity to have a break now after going so hard for so long. And it's been a great journey. It's been and obviously culminating in the award last night.
Yeah,
I feel like it's recognition for the whole team and the amount of energy and effort that we've put into it. Passion, love, hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. It's extraordinary to sort of get here.
It's been a real privilege, right, to see it from the beginning, right? It must be 4 years ago that I first went on the beta, and then I was just blown away by it, and kind of just had to become friends with you, right?
Yeah.
It was just incredible what you were doing, and what you've shared there about the exit, and you touched on, there's been another similar one. It's kind of groundbreaking what's happened here in Oz.
Oh yeah.
Right? If you look at anywhere else in the world, where else have neobanks been absorbed, acquired by major banks, right?
Yeah, there's been a few, but like I say, the most famous one is Bank Simple, because they were sort of seen as the first digital bank.
Yeah.
But it's really sad. I know Josh, and I feel like it's a sad situation and I think he was sad too, like not only when he left the company, but then after it was acquired, things didn't go to plan, and now BBVA have shut it down.
Right.
It's gone. And it was the pioneer. It was Simple and Monzo were our inspiration for creating Up. Just to see it disappear like that, it's sort of a sad situation. So I think that what we've been able to do with Up, and we've been, we look in Australia, 86400 is another example of an acquisition, but they've rebranded to Eubank. They've been absorbed into the sort of NAB mothership. It's just a very different way to do an acquisition, and a more traditional way. And I just think it's kind of sad. You lose the personality, you lose the heart and soul of why we created it in the first place. And I think sticking around as a founding team, so it's not just me, like Anson's still there. In fact, we're celebrating today. Anson's one of the people that's been with us for more than 10 years.
Wow.
And so we're going to be, celebrating the success of the team and the ability for everyone to choose to stay, as one team. And our CEO, Xavier, actually worked with us 14 years ago, and then, before Ferocia was even created at our last startup. And then he moved to San Francisco, went to Square, just a small company with Jack Dorsey,
Square,
built this $100 billion company, and then he came back and joined us sort of in retirement, saying he was just going to do a little bit of tinkering, a bit of development. And his brother worked with us as well, so like really close-knit team of people. And now he's the CEO of Up, I just think it's awesome. And the fact that the people sort of leave, go and spread their wings, create other major successes around the world, and then come back to Ferocia and settle in and now working on Up again.
And I've been saying this for the last 7-8 years, right? As a startup, on that journey, you're different businesses that require different people, and I've often seen it where somebody at the early stage probably isn't then the right person in this mid stage, but then can come back later on and create a lot more value. And it's kind of, why does the relationship have to be that you stuck with each other for 10 years, right?
Well, we have this sort of philosophy that with staff, once a Ferocian, always a Ferocian. So we even list every single past staff member on the front page of our website. So for us, that sort of feeling of belonging, that sort of family feeling is really important. But we also treat our customers that way. So the idea is that if you're an upsider, you're an upsider for life, and you can go and do something else. But we want to make the offboarding process and then the reboarding process just as awesome as the onboarding process, right? Why not? Like, you create a community, you put your heart and soul into it for a decade. Like, you want to leverage that, you want to take advantage of that. And I think for the customers that make the commitment to join the upside and to move over their banking from wherever they are, or to just even try Up and have Up alongside their other banks or whatever, that level of commitment to us is extraordinary, and we want to value that and we want to reward that. So for us, whether you're a staff member or whether you're a customer, having that sort of carousel where you can leave, you can be part of it. You might, for example, use Up while you're at home with your parents. You might go off overseas and use a different bank. You might come back, you're at university, go back to Up. I think that's the future. Like, the future is companies providing services, providing value, and people throughout their lifetime being able to have it on tap and use that service when they need it, when it's valuable for their life, help them out with financial well-being, help them out with when they're in a shared house, help them save for a home. But you don't have to be their only bank, and you don't have to be their bank for their whole life. So I think it's just a different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Now, you talked about family there, kind of nice little lead in to the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which is you've created a family office investment fund. And look, I'm absolutely, This is one of the things I am most excited about in fintech in Australia. If we see what's happened in the US, where you've had successful exits and then people have made, a significant amount of money that they've then been able to put in and invest in the next generation. Now, I couldn't think of anybody better to be at the beginning stages and advising and supporting this next wave of fintechs than yourself. I described you as the Steve Jobs of fintech when I first met you, but having got to know you and see you in operation, what started off as like maybe a meme is like you're one of the best marketers I've ever met in my life. You're one of the greatest entrepreneurs I've ever met in my life. Like technology-wise, you're one of the smartest people I've ever met. You've got this track record, which is incredible, of just building stuff. And now the ecosystem gets access to that.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate you saying
yeah,
that.
look, mate, it's and I say it right because I mean it, right?
Yeah.
It's I've seen what you've done, I've used what you've built, right? And I know the people that you've had around you and the people that you attract. But would you like to share with the viewers and the listeners a little bit about kind of your plans, types of industries that you're looking at? Fintech's become really kind of, it's diverging everywhere. We've got, health is coming into it, environment's coming into it. What's the thesis for you guys?
I'll just go back to when you said you couldn't think of anyone better. I think I think of at least two people better. One is Anson Parker, and I use him as an example of all of our staff. Part of the exit of the business is actually creating wealth that's multi-generational and creating wealth for all of our staff. If we can make millionaires out of our staff, the people that built up from the ground up, then they can, one day when they leave Ferocia, they can actually then fund their own startup and they can help others. They can invest in other founders, other entrepreneurs. So for me, one sort of person that's better than me is all of the Ferocians, right? They're the people building up, and we want to help make them or help them be in a position where they can help others.
So it's a real family office.
It's a real family office. And then the second is, for me, Judy. So Judy was CEO of Fintech, Startup Victoria. And Startup Victoria is not limited to fintech, but she built Australia's largest community of startups, 60,000 startups, right? And so she's now working with me in the family office.
Wow.
And she runs all the investments, and she helped me put together this sort of idea and the thesis and everything. So I'll answer your question. I just want to say that there are people in the industry that are extraordinary. People like Simone Joyce or Lauren Kaplan or Simon Cant, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Like there's amazing people in the industry that have been working long and hard, even longer than me. And even in the VC space, like people like Jax Vullings at Airtree. I just have an enormous amount of respect for those people. And what we're trying to do with the family office is give something back. So I'll give you a couple of sort of highlights. Is that it's not about us, like maybe a big venture capitalist putting in money and just trying to get a return. The return is almost immaterial. It's more using that capital to assist others. So there's so many stories I have for you, but I'll just give you the thesis first, which you asked. Fintech is something I'm passionate about. In the last 18 months, I've exited 3 fintechs, 2 of which I founded. One was Pin Payments and one was Ferocia, and the other one was in the UK, Nutmeg. And those 3 companies collectively exited for $1.5 billion, approximately.
Wow.
That's the value that they've been able to create over the last 11 years. And so it's a long time, 11 years, but those businesses have all done exceptionally well. And although I'm not a huge shareholder in all of those businesses, the amount of money that you get from those type of exits means that we can then back others. So for example, we got a call the other day. So fintech is one of the main things, right? We got a call the other day from a brand new a business that is sort of just going through the capital raising process, and they don't have enough runway to get through to their capital raise. And so they rang us in a bit of a flurry, and no one will invest in them. And many other people that we know in the industry have already invested in them before. And in the current economic climate, they just needed more money to pay payroll. And so we put up our hand and said, we will cover you until you are able to do your capital raise. And they're planning a capital raise on Birchal, and Birchal's one of our portfolio companies, and so crowdfunding. And so we're just helping them get through that little gap, across the chasm, so that they can survive. And it's a female-led Aussie startup, and it's going to be a great Aussie startup, and they're already dominating around the world in what it is that they do, but they're just running out of money.
Yep.
And in the current economic climate, it's hard.
Yeah.
So for us, we're able to help a great Aussie founder. And that brings me to our second part of our thesis, which is to back women founders.
Right.
So where we can back a female-led business, then we're sort of balancing the scales, because nearly everyone who's running a fintech is like me, a 40-year-old guy with a beard, often a white guy with a beard.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at is, can we find more diverse founders? Can we support people from LGBTQ, community? Can we support people that are Indigenous? Can we support people that maybe are migrant workers that are trying to do a startup in Australia? And so backing female leaders and women-led businesses, I think, is a signal that we want to help make the industry more diverse.
Yeah.
So fintech is one thing. Women-founded businesses and startups is another, and then the other one for us is climate tech. And I've been secretly over the last 20 years backing climate businesses because it's my passion.
Yeah.
So I work in fintech, but I want to have I want to save the planet.
Do you know how many ex-founders are now all gone into climate tech?
Yeah, I know. It's amazing,
yeah.
right? And the thing is, for me, is that I have young kids, and so I think about the future. And I mentioned earlier, the multi-generational wealth. And you said that hopefully we can make Australia more like what we see in California or in London or in Hong Kong, where you've got decades of these exits, which then create wealth that can be invested in the next generation. So for me, climate tech is even beyond that. It's more of like the future of humanity. So we'll look at energy storage, energy generation. We're cleaning up the oceans, creating electric bikes, electric vehicles, battery storage, wave energy, wind power, solar power, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been just casually investing in those businesses for more than a decade. And now we have in the portfolio, we only started the family office in January. We now have over 60 companies in the portfolio already.
Wow.
But the other thing we do is that outside of our thesis to focus on women and fintech and climate tech, we're also investing in funds so that we can amplify the impact we can have. And so when you think about the type of funds that we look at, we wanted to, in that same sort of objective, we wanted to help the capital flows in the market and help the whole market to evolve and to grow, even beyond fintech, like the whole startup community in Australia. And so, of course, we're interested in backing Airtree and Blackbird and Square Peg, like the big guys, which we do. But we're also interested in the university innovation funds and the venture capital funds that are spun out of that. We're interested in the seed capital, private equity, alternatives. So we work with Matt Allen at Tractor, and we've invested pretty heavily in the businesses that are offering alternative finance as well as the funds that are doing that. So sitting here today, we have probably more than 20 funds, definitely more than a dozen, but probably 20 or so that we back as well. And what that does is that increases the breadth of the impact that little old Dom can have, right?
Yeah.
So I sit on many boards, Fintech Australia board. I do mentoring and advisory and all that sort of stuff, but I can't replicate myself.
Yeah.
And so I came across Judy. We teamed up, and now there's two of us. But even the two of us, we can't do it all, right?
Yeah.
So what we're able to do is by teaming up with those other funds and those other businesses and those other alternative ways to make sort of fintech and startups more awesome, then we can sort of amplify our impact, and that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big family. Oh, we started a foundation too.
Oh, wow.
So for people in need, and we've got our first foundation member. The idea was to help direct family members, so people that I'm directly related to who need assistance in their life, and then beyond direct family members, I want to help Ferocians because they've helped me.
Yep.
And then beyond Ferocians, I want to help Upsiders because Upsiders are our bigger family. And then beyond that, we want to help people in the industry. And then we're, as I said, looking at people from more diverse backgrounds and people in need. And so that's a multi-generational strategy, and I hope that my kids will want to follow through and continue with that. So started the foundation, started the family office, investing in all these amazing businesses. And I'll just say one other thing, in an overview that the type of businesses that we've backed, other than companies that I've started, like Ferocia and Up and Pin, other companies that you might have heard of, just small ones like Square or Afterpay, or there's all sorts of companies that PayPal and Tesla and Google and Microsoft and all the sort of big public companies, but then also these smaller startups that you might not have heard of that are emerging. So organisations like Cash Invest or Zepto. And where fintech and climate change sort of smash together and intersect, we've just recently helped close a round for a company in the UK called Green Growth.
Oh, yeah.
And they came out to Australia and did the startup boot camp. And so I'm mentoring them, and I meet them every week or every fortnight, and we try and help them and assist them in growing their business.
Yeah.
But it hits multiple areas. So you've got fintech on the one hand, and then you've got climate tech on the other. Like, it's awesome.
We had Brian on the show, maybe it's about 2 months back, and he mentioned these guys.
Yeah.
And the conversation that Brian and I had was exactly this, right? It's I remember going to Singapore for the Fintech Festival at the end of 2019, and it blew my mind because I seen that fintech was like, it was kind of the foundation or the bedrock for everything else in society. All the problems that we've got, Internet of Things, logistics, it was like that was underpinning it all. And it was great chatting with Brian, because their research was basically everything that I'm seeing now, particularly having invited a lot more early stage startups on the show. We're seeing that people are solving real problems.
Yep.
Whereas last year, Dom, it was heartbreaking. Everybody's doing a buy now, pay later for home loans, recruitment fees. Now we're seeing, I think, real problems being tackled. And what's also really encouraging is, a lot of these businesses, they're actually getting a product in the hands of customers before then going and asking strangers for money, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's great that if you've got somebody who's got an idea where it's got customers that can go to you and say, hey, what do you think?
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, Startup Bootcamp is actually a great example, right? So I met Brian some years ago, and he asked me if I could come along and talk to the cohort. And so I went down, maybe it was at Stone and Chalk or something like that, and I went down and I spoke to the cohort. And then Brian said, hey, we're launching a fund, are you interested? So I invested in the fund. And then he said, can you come along and mentor some of the startups? So then I mentor the startups. And then now they're launching a new fund, which is the new Sustainable Fintech Fund, which brings together the climate tech and the fintech. And so we're a substantial investor in that fund. And so then they were looking for a new office because they're growing. And so now we've moved Startup Bootcamp into the Up office. So we're actually sharing an office with Ferocia, right? So that journey is like maybe 5 years or more. And you can see how the relationship with Brian and others, Trevor and others, has evolved over that time. And I've been able to help them through mentorship, through my time. I've been able to help them through, small investments in their early stage funds. I've then been able to directly invest in businesses that have come out of it, like Green Growth, for example. And then I've been able to, even find them a new office. So I think that it's not just about money. It's about actually giving a shit about the industry and helping people. Like these are people who have put their life on the line, especially the founders, the entrepreneurs, and they're risking something to try and create a better world. I want to help those people however we can. So that's why we created this.
And I think that's what you've shared there is what makes the Aussie fintech industry and community unique. In my eyes, anyway. I don't think anywhere else in the world is as tight knit, like genuinely people who want to just help each other.
I mean, how many hugs and kisses were there at the Finnies last night? It's extraordinary.
I mean, and you know how many people I'd known for 2.5, 3 years and I've not met until last night.
I know. Seeing people face to face is extraordinary. But like I said to Judy last night, I got little kids and they're going to bed and I'm going to go early. And I love it. It's an honour to win the award and everything. It's amazing. But I'll get out of here. I'll just go around and say goodbye. About 4 hours later,
I was going to say, because we were talking to each other at 11 p.m.
You know what I mean? Like it was just so amazing, and I think that that community. I mean, I was replying to text messages and social media and everything, everyone saying congratulations or whatever, and there were hundreds and hundreds of messages to the point where there were so many I had to put my phone down because I just wanted to see all these people face to face in real life. So I think that community, and I talked to Judy about because she's been a big part of building that community. I think that community is not only heartwarming, but it's also relatively unique. It's hard to find and it's grown so much. Like it's hard to find a community anywhere else in the world that is that close knit. I mean, you and me talking about this sort of stuff and getting together our annual event in your hotel room. I mean, our relationship has developed, right?
Yeah.
And then I can help you find people for other fintechs. And then you can call me and say, I've got this great person. Do you know what we can do with them? So I just feel like those relationships and helping each other is how we create the success.
Yeah, and look, I think what kind of underpins it, right, is this really strong values set, which as people can tell, right, I'm not Aussie. Actually, I turn 18-year-old Aussie next week, and it all began here in Melbourne. But what really, I identify more with being an Aussie than I do being a Brit, and the reason why is I think just the values and the spirit of the country, right? It's like we talk a lot about mateship, and it's not tradies down the pub, right? It's what we're talking about is actually caring about, and feeling privileged to live in a really beautiful country and caring about the people that are in it and trying to make a positive impact.
Oh, yeah. It's the selflessness, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like caring for other humans.
Yeah.
Another example for you is that I've been following Chris Titley for a long time, and I see his posts on on LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff. And so one time when we were up in Brisbane, he reached out and said, "Hey, Dom and Anson, you're up in Brisbane. Why don't you come out to the office and we'll catch up and everything?" And he was working as a stockbroker, and I think he's worked as a stockbroker for maybe 20 years, not 19 years or something like that. And so we went out and we saw him at his office, and then he introduced us to other startups and other founders and other entrepreneurs. And then over the years, he came down to Melbourne and he did a podcast out of our office. And then next time we were in Brisbane, I visited him again and took Anson up with me again and all that. And so we just developed this relationship. And then one day he sort of rang me and said, love to do another podcast and everything. And I think he'd done hundreds by this stage, And I said, so what are you doing? You're doing this stuff full time? And he's like, no, I'm just doing it on the side. It's just a hobby. I said, what would it take for you to quit your job and do this full time and amplify the content channels for every startup in Australia? And he said, to take, X amount of money, and I'd need to quit my job and do it full time and build a team. And I said, okay, let's do it. Cool. So we've just announced a new joint venture with Chris Titley called Sub 11, and it means that he can quit his job and follow his passion, and we can actually help every startup in Australia that we get.
And look, I've seen the impact of my podcast, right?
That's amazing.
I've got, we're listened to in 40 countries. Yeah, I've got clients who call me who say, hey, we just want to thank you. We've just hired a country GM in Sweden because he listened to the podcast.
Yeah, awesome.
And was like, hey, you guys rock.
Well, I'll tell you what else is that when people ring me up and say, or they ring up the PR company or whatever, and they say, we want to interview Dom, they go and read the blog post on your website, or they go and listen to the podcast. Because, the people, the caliber of the founders and entrepreneurs that you have interviewed over the years, it's extraordinary. Yeah. It's like, it's the who's who, and all the Finnies interviews and all the, it's just amazing. Like that is the sort of content that can help this industry evolve.
Oh, look, absolutely.
Yeah,
right. And it's, the great thing is for my business, I've never had to make a sales call in 3 years, right? I go last night, and even though people I don't know who I am.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so I think it's, when you've, and this is the thing that really strikes me and what I love seeing with these early stage startups. Somebody who won an award yesterday, one guy, right, who's had a big impact on the industry, right, and he won Professional Services Award. And I remember giving that guy advice 4 years ago. So if you're listening and you're watching, well, good on you, mate. But it's that kind of virtuous circle, right? Like all ships rise with the tide.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to need that more than ever, because I think the period that we're coming into, it's going to be challenging.
Tighten your belts.
Yeah.
I feel like the economic environment, it's cyclical, right? So it goes up and down all the time. This next generation of founders have basically had the privilege of growing up over the last decade with the market booming, and valuations out of control, heaps of venture capital money, it's I wouldn't say it's been easy, but it's been a much easier ride than it will be in the next number of years. And so I think that successful businesses, or businesses that we're going to be successful, will continue to be successful. Businesses like Up, we continue growing, we continue innovating. I think that's just the way it is. The businesses that were probably always going to fail are now not going to be able to get the capital, or are now not going to be able to hire the right people, or are now not going to be able to scale. And I think that there's going to be casualties of war. And the economic
I think
climate,
consolidation is the term we're all using. But I agree with you. It is going to be. I think it's going to be a little bit more.
What I'm saying is that's why the people that are being successful in the last 10 years need to give back. Because I know that I can help those founders that are now going through the tough times. That are now suffering to help their businesses to survive. The example I gave before.
Exactly.
So that's why I feel like I'd like to see more of the successful fintech founders that have gone and built a great business, that have created value, that have built a community, that have employed hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people, depending on how big their business is. I'd like to see them doing more for the ground roots, the grassroots sort of community, and just to help perpetuate that, and then create it so that I've been doing it for 25 years. So I know a lot of the people, and the people have changed, and people have retired, and new people have come in. But I'd love to see the next lot of people, getting involved, so that we can just keep growing. Because I heard someone say, might have been the minister last night in the introduction, saying that when we sort of look back 10 years or whatever, we had a handful of fintechs. Now we've got unicorns and decacorns, and now we've got hundreds of fintechs. So I think that
and you pointed out as well that last night at the awards, there was nobody who won multiple awards.
Recipients. So it's now, because the industry is growing, the fintech community, we can give out so many awards at the Finnies, and there's no multiple winners.
And I've got to say, this is the third year doing the People's Choice Awards, where I get to interview the finalists from both categories, and especially emerging fintech. I was like, this is like, how are they going to judge this, right?
It's kind of trendy now. It's kind of trendy. Like when I first started in fintech, it wasn't called fintech. It was just, I worked at a financial services company. I worked at a software company. They weren't quite sort of together yet. And since we've become fintech, there's now around the world, like they call it, the fintech mafia, which is all the old school, the people that came out of maybe PayPal, or maybe Braintree is sort of a more modern one. And so then when you start looking now at these new fintechs that are just beginning, and you look at the challenges that they have ahead of them, I just want to bring everyone closer together and leverage the power of the community.
And look, and this is why I wanted to get you on the show, is because I think if we are going to kind of follow that UK or Silicon Valley, where we do get the opportunity to give back, the one thing I'd like to see is that maybe the VC model itself changes here, because we've seen that it doesn't necessarily, the things that you're trying to tackle doesn't tackle diversity. We've seen, the numbers around funding for females. I mean, it's just shocking, right? And to solve those problems, you need to have a different approach. Not a growth at all costs. Not
no power laws. No power laws. I mean, we do co-invest with venture capitalists, and we invest in the VC firms. So I kind of feel like it's almost like a bet each way, in the sense that we try to reach scale, but what we try to do with our time is that we try to mentor, advise, assist. We do a lot of introductions. Like we met someone the other day, and they're working for, I won't say who it is, but they're working for a large corporate. And they just got their walking order, they got their marching notice. and so we had scheduled the phone call, the Zoom, a month ago. And when we jumped on yesterday, instead of talking about the opportunities with that company, we started talking about who can we introduce them to, like yourself, to find another executive position, to start their own startup, to find capital, to build a team. And so the conversation changes because of the economic climate. So I think where we can use our network and our experience and that leverage that community to help others to get started, or to help others to grow, or to help other, to help with diversity. They're the sort of things that I think make a difference.
And look, you mentioned Cash as one of the companies. I've known Caleb since he started. Right, met him 4 years ago at meetups, and his original idea of it being a neobank, and then it pivoted. And it's really important that we have people around, right? Because the story that he's got, three of the finalists in emerging fintech had all done that pivot, right, of trying to go B2C and realizing that, hey,
it's really hard.
It's really hard. There's not a big enough market. I go B2B, and then they get some real fast traction. And so that's the other thing with the podcast is, as I talk to this next wave, they're saying, "Oh, I've been listening to your podcast for 2 years, and I'm not doing it this way or this way or this way. I'm gonna," right? Yeah. And so we've got this archive of knowledge, right? That just gets, it just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love your work, Dexter.
Mate, I love yours too. That's why we do it in a hotel room.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, Dom, it's been great to have you on the show. Look, if there's people listening who have an idea, they've got a startup, they want, value investors like yourself, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, just reach out on social media. My mobile phone number's on the front page of the website.
Is Judy open?
And Judy, Judy's in charge. She runs it all for me.
Super impressive.
She's amazing.
Super impressive.
And so, look, just feel free to reach out, and we help as many people as we can.
Awesome.
And by the way, where we can't help directly, we introduce to others that can.
Yeah, brilliant. Dom, thanks so much for joining me. Great to see you.
Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.